Hey guys, Jeff here. I'm just about to upgrade my MCP carb kit on my KLR here from version 1 to version 2, and I thought I would document the process. I'm not going to cover how to remove the carb, I'm just going to cover the actual carb procedure for doing the upgrade to 2.0. There's 4 things you're going to need. You're going to need a 38 pilot. You're going to need to remove a O-ring from the slide that comes in version 1. You're going to need a one size larger main jet, and then the most important part is there's a vacuum cutoff that needs to be sealed up completely. So let's jump into it. Okay, so these are the instructions that were sent with my version 1 kit. This is my current setup with the aftermarket exhaust, modified airbox, snorkel out, and I'm also running 692cc top end. So as you can see, it's actually a 42 pilot, and it's a 155 main jet. So I wasn't exactly sure which main jet to run, so I reached out to Grant, sent him a message, and he got back to me and said for MCP version 2 I should still be running a 155 main jet, and obviously the 38 pilots, which I've got right there. You are supposed to move up one size main jet with version 2.0. So if you're not sure like I was, you can always reach out to Grant at MCP, send him a message, and he'll get back to you with what you should be running. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is remove the rubber O-ring from the slide. Okay, be careful not to lose the spring. It is under pressure, and you want to be gentle with this rubber diaphragm here. So just gonna pry it loose. Okay, and you can see there's the rubber O-ring we need to get off. Okay, so I'm just going to take a pick and very gently get underneath of it and try to walk this off. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put that retaining clip back in. I've got the retainer back in. I'm just going to hold off on the spring for now. I'll slide this back in. It only goes one way, so if it's backwards it won't actually fit in. And I'm just going to seat the rubber diaphragm back down into its slot. That looks good. Tip here, if you're having trouble getting this rubber diaphragm to seat, you can use just a tiny bit of rubber cement, Elmer's rubber cement, around the edge here, and it'll help it stick into place. And line up the cap. And set that back on. Okay, now that I've got the cap back on and the bolts seated in, I'm just going to test the operation of the slide. So you can hear what the sound it makes. There should be like some air resistance there. If you push on the slide and it shoots up and falls back down with no resistance, it means that rubber diaphragm is not sealed correctly, and you need to take this off and make sure it's sealed. Okay, next we're going to remove the float bowl so we can get out the pilot jet and change it. Okay. Just be careful. Don't want to lose any parts here. Okay, So I can see my main jet right here, and I can confirm that is a 155 main jet. I don't know if you can see that. Now we're going to go into the pilot and remove it. So with a small flathead screwdriver, I'm going to go in here and get it to seat into the slot. There we go. And remove it. And there we go. Okay, so now we've got the 38 pilots here. Just going to open that up. And we're going to put the new pilot down here and make sure it seats, and we're just going to gently screw that in until it is snug. You don't need to go overboard because it is brass and it's soft and can damage easily. So there we go. That's in. Now I'm going to put the float bowl back on. Tip: if you take your float bowl off and the float bowl gasket comes off and you can't get it to seat properly, you can boil these in hot water for about 5 minutes, and that'll get rid of any of the oil residue, which makes them expand and make it easier to seat them back into the bowl once they're down to their proper size again. Okay, I've got all the float bowl bolts tightened. I'm going to adjust the pilot screw. So as you can see, I've got the thumb pilot screw here. It needs to be backed out 3 to 3.5 turns. I'm going to go with 3.5 and see how that feels. So I'm going to screw this in just gently until it lightly seats. Okay, so I've got this seated lightly, and I can see that it's pointing to about the 3:30 position or so, 4 o'clock position. So now we're going to back it at 3.5. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. And there's 3.5. Okay, the last thing we need to do is to seal this up. Just be careful. This is under pressure with the spring. Okay, so with the MCP 1 kit, there was a plug that came with it. I've got that in there already. I am going to have to remove this diaphragm, and I'm going to cut out the middle and use the outer part of the diaphragm as a seal. But the important piece here, from what I understand correctly, is that these caps don't sit flat. So they need to be sanded down with some light sandpaper and make sure they're 100% flat. And then this port right here needs to be filled with JB Weld and also sanded flat. So I'm going to do that next. Grant does have some plates you can buy that he's made that will just fit on top of here if you decide not to go the route of modifying your cap. But I'm gonna go with modifying my cap. Okay, so I've carefully gone and cut the center of the diaphragm out, and now the next step is to lightly sand this with some fine sandpaper. I'll probably use 400 wet dry and get it nice and smooth. Okay, so you're going to want a really flat surface here. I've got my 400 grit wet dry. I've added a little bit of water. My preference is to do wet sanding. And I'm just going to place this on here and just move it. Circular, figure 8, that kind of stuff. There we go. Now it's starting to look even all the way around. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. It's all cleaned off, and I think what I'll do is I'll just give this a quick shot with some carb cleaner, make sure it's cleaned out, and then I'm going to plug this little passageway here. I'm going to plug it from the inside with a little bit of JB Weld. I've got my JB Weld mixed up, and I'm just going to put a little bit of it in this passageway here and plug that up. I'm going to try with a toothpick first because we don't need much. Okay, now that we've got the passageway plugged up, we're just going to let that dry, and then we'll come back to finish up the rest. Alright, we're back. This is the next day, so the JB Weld is all cured, and that hole is definitely plugged up. Alright, got the diaphragm cut and installed, so it's going to help seal that passage off. So what I'm going to do, this isn't part of the instructions, but I thought would be a good idea. I'm going to take some MotoSeal. This is the same stuff you use when you're going to join two halves of a case together in the bottom end of your motorcycle engine. There's Honda makes this stuff. I think it's called Honda Bond. I think all the manufacturers do essentially the same stuff. This is fuel resistant or gasoline proof, and I'm going to place a small bead of it around this cap on the outside here, and that'll help seal this whole area off. This stuff doesn't dry 100%. It's still pliable a little bit when it cures, so that way if I ever want to remove this cap again, I can do so. It's not permanent, and I'll just ensure that it's sealed up really well around here, because that's the key to this modification and going to the 2.0 is that this has to be sealed 100%. So we're just going to apply this very thin layer around this outside edge. So we've got our MotoSeal on the outside, just a thin layer. Now we're going to put the cap back on. And then we want to put the bracket back on. And the screws. Okay, that's it for the modifications to the carburetor. So the next thing left to do is to mount this in the bike and take it for a test drive. Alright, so immediately I notice that the bike does run very smooth, smoother than before at very low RPM. So like if I'm doing, you know, when you kind of put it in that low RPM range, high gear, when you're traveling through your neighborhood, you want to keep it quiet. It's much more responsive with that. I don't notice any increase in power. It's the same to the mid-range and top end that it was with version 1. I do notice more popping on I notice more popping when I'm decelerating. That was sort of there before, but there's more there now. But from what I understand, that's to be expected. I don't know if you can hear it through the microphone. Try to find a spot where I can do it. You might be able to hear it. mean, it's not terrible. But let me see if I can get it to do it. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but there's a little bit of popping. It's nothing major. The acceleration on top end is the same, which when I first put in the MCP kit was like night and day difference. So much more mid-range and top end acceleration compared to stock or the KLX needle. Now I guess the next big thing would be to find out if I'm getting better gas mileage, which is supposed to be, which is the claim that's supposed to happen. Okay, let's take it to a trail, see what it's like off-road. Alright, let's see. I mean, like the throttle response seems fairly smooth. Because, you know, when you're doing these kinds of trails, it's that low RPM range. Yeah, I mean, like so far it's so good. I'm liking it.